Never expected the little girl I used to rock to sleep would one day try to strip away everything I own. My name is Evelyn Vance, and at 70 years old, my mind is completely intact, though my family recently tried to prove otherwise. Every morning begins exactly the same way without an alarm clock. As I enjoy my strong coffee on the back porch and watch the local wildlife gather near the oak trees, I maintain a strict routine of long walks with my neighbor, organize community events for my church, and take care of my property independently. I am far from helpless. Yet my own daughter convinced herself that I was a problem to be managed. Her name is Brenda, and she is 43, married to a man named Gregory who changes jobs more often than the seasons change. For over 2 decades, the two of them have lived a lifestyle they simply cannot afford. Drowning in debt to maintain a superficial image, they bought a massive house in an upscale suburban neighborhood, drove luxury cars with enormous monthly payments, and financed lavish vacations just to post the photos online. I never criticized their reckless financial choices because it was not my place to interfere in another adult's life. Brenda was mature enough to make her own decisions, even if those choices ultimately kept her awake at night. Meanwhile, my late husband Arthur and I spent nearly 40 years building our lives in a quiet, beautiful corner of Ohio. We completely paid off our mortgage nearly a decade before cancer took him away from me on a cold November evening. The diagnosis was swift and devastating, leaving me with only a few months to say goodbye before holding his hand as he took his final breath. After he passed, I drove myself home, sat in the driveway for an hour in total silence, and then walked inside to care for my home. I was grieving deeply, but I did not fall apart or stop taking care of my daily responsibilities. Shortly after Arthur died, Brenda began calling me much more frequently than usual, which initially felt like genuine maternal comfort. She would check on me during the evenings and visit on weekends. Sitting in my kitchen while I baked fresh bread for the neighborhood, it felt as though we were rebuilding our bond after years of being distant, and I truly appreciated her presence during those lonely months. However, the nature of her visits shifted gradually, moving away from comfort and toward an unsettling curiosity about my living situation. She began questioning if my house was too large for a widow and subtly suggesting that maintaining it was becoming dangerous. I repeatedly assured Brenda that I had a reliable support system, including helpful neighbors and a personal medical alert system I purchased myself. She would nod politely during these conversations, but she always managed to steer the topic back to my living arrangements and safety. The real turning point occurred on a rainy afternoon when she arrived at my house accompanied by Gregory, carrying a thick manila folder. Gregory stood awkwardly near the entrance with his arms crossed, avoiding eye contact completely, while Brenda sat across from me and placed the paperwork on the table. She looked me in the eye and said we needed to discuss my long-term future. Brenda delivered a long, carefully rehearsed speech about how much she and Gregory worried about me living entirely alone in this large house. She claimed she was losing sleep over the property taxes, the harsh winters, and the possibility of me falling with no one around to help. When she finally opened the folder, she slid a legal document across the table and asked me to sign a durable power of attorney. The paperwork was designed to grant them total authority over my life, under the guise of protecting me, just in case an emergency occurred. I looked at the pages, then at my silent son-in-law, and asked what exactly they expected to happen. My daughter insisted the arrangement was purely for my own benefit because reaching 70 meant I needed a reliable safety net for my affairs. When I asked who prepared the document, she admitted she hired a local attorney herself to save me the unnecessary trouble of finding one. I inquired whether this lawyer was working for my interests or hers, which caused a tense silence. To fill the kitchen before, she repeated, "It was for my protection." I calmly picked up the paperwork, told her I required time to review everything privately, and handed her a fresh loaf of bread as I guided them toward the door. That evening, I sat beneath the kitchen light and carefully scrutinized every single line of the legal document they left behind. Having spent decades working as an administrator for a large corporation, I knew how to interpret complex contracts and spot hidden clauses. By the time I reached the final pages, a heavy feeling of dread settled deep in my chest because the terms were incredibly alarming. This agreement gave Brenda immediate control over my bank accounts, my real estate, and my medical choices without needing to prove I was incapacitated. It was a complete surrender of my autonomy, masquerading as an act of familial love and protection. The realization that my own child wanted to strip away my independence kept me awake for the remainder of the night as I stared at the ceiling. The next morning, I called my closest friend, a retired paralegal, who immediately urged me to seek independent legal counsel rather than trusting Brenda's attorney. Following her advice, I secured an appointment with an experienced elder law specialist named Miriam Vance, bringing the document along with me. Miriam reviewed the paperwork carefully, lowered her glasses, and asked if my daughter was currently facing severe financial distress or bankruptcy. I confessed that Brenda and Gregory were constantly living beyond their means, pointing to their expensive cars and heavy mortgage as potential triggers. Miriam explained that I was under no legal obligation to sign their document and warned me about the dangers of broad power of attorney agreements. She advised me to establish a secure estate plan that would protect my assets while keeping total control in my hands during my lifetime. Miriam noted that family members can genuinely love you while simultaneously making decisions that serve their own financial interests rather than yours. I paid her fee immediately and scheduled a follow-up appointment to take decisive action. Over the next 2 months, I quietly reorganized my entire estate with Miriam's professional guidance without breathing a word to my family. I established a revocable living trust, updated my final will, and granted a limited power of attorney to my trusted, lifelong friend instead of Brenda. Every single asset was securely protected, and I kept the legal copies hidden safely in a secure lockbox inside my bedroom closet. Throughout this entire process, Brenda continued to call regularly, and I maintained a perfectly normal, warm demeanor so she wouldn't suspect anything had changed. She remained patient and confident, assuming it was only a matter of time before I relented. Eventually, Brenda visited me alone on a Sunday afternoon, skipping the pleasantries to reveal the true motivation behind her sudden persistence. She broke down and admitted that Gregory's business venture was failing. Their mortgage payments were overdue, and they were facing imminent financial ruin. She shamelessly argued that since she would inherit my estate anyway, granting her early access to my finances would provide them with a vital safety net. Hearing my daughter speak about my life's work as her personal financial backup plan felt like a cold betrayal, shattering the remaining trust I had in her. I swallowed my heartbreak, looked at my child, and calmly explained that I could never sign the broad agreement she provided. I informed her that I was already working with my own lawyer to update my estate plan, ensuring she would be taken care of eventually. She left my home, looking frustrated but entirely unaware that I had already legally blocked her from accessing a single penny of my savings. A few weeks later, she called with an even bolder proposal, suggesting I sign my entire house over to her as a gift to simplify things. I thanked her for the suggestion, hung up the phone, and immediately contacted Miriam to schedule a final family meeting. I instructed Brenda and Gregory to come to my house on a Saturday morning, claiming we needed to finalize the legal details together. When they arrived, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation, and I could see the triumphant hope gleaming in my daughter's eyes as she sat down. I placed my secure lockbox on the table, opened it slowly, and began laying out the completed legal documents one by one before them. I presented my living trust, my updated will, and a formal letter from my attorney outlining the severe consequences of financial elder abuse under state law. I looked at them both and firmly stated that my estate was permanently locked, meaning my home and savings would remain entirely under my control. I expressed my sympathy for their financial struggles but made it clear that I would not sacrifice my security to bail them out. I informed them that any attempt to challenge my mental capacity or my legal arrangements would be met with immediate legal resistance from my attorney. Brenda's face flushed with deep embarrassment, while Gregory stared silently at his coffee cup, completely neutralized by the realization that their plan had utterly failed. They left shortly after, and as I watched their car pull away from my driveway, an overwhelming sense of emotional exhaustion washed over me. I grieved for the loss of the innocent relationship I thought I had with my daughter, but I also felt incredibly empowered. Months passed, and Gregory eventually secured a stable job, forcing them to downsize their lifestyle and learn to live within their actual financial means. Brenda eventually called to offer a genuine apology, admitting that greed and desperation had clouded her judgment regarding my well-being. Today, we are slowly rebuilding our relationship on honest terms, and I remain safe and independent in the home Arthur and I built together. Please like and subscribe my channel if you loved your